My name is Emma, and I never believed in life after death until I died. And what I saw, what I felt, completely shattered everything I thought I knew about reality. But it wasn't just the light or the sense of peace. There was something else, something I'll never forget. Something that still haunts me to this day. It started the way so many near-death experiences does. I was suddenly out of my body, floating above the scene. I could see the doctors frantically working on me. My heart had stopped. I was supposed to be dead. But instead of panic, I felt peaceful, almost weightless. Like I was floating in warm water. But then, something shifted. It wasn't just the light people talk about, or the tunnel that seemed to stretch on forever. There was another place, another realm. And I was drawn there, not by my will, but by something else. Something I couldn't explain. As I entered this strange dimension, I found myself in a vast, dark landscape. The air was thick, oppressive, like it carried the weight of 1,000 regrets. It felt wrong, and in the distance, I saw something moving. At first, I thought it was a shadow, but as it came closer, I froze. I couldn't believe my eyes. There, standing in front of me, was a man I had only seen in textbooks and history classes. But this wasn't just any man. This was Adolf Hitler. But he wasn't the man I expected to see. He wasn't standing tall, proud, or imposing. He was on his knees, shivering, his face twisted in terror. His eyes met mine, but they weren't the eyes of a leader. They were the eyes of someone who had realized, far too late, what he had done. His voice was low, almost a whisper. And what he said to me, it still chills me to the bone. "They're all coming for me," he murmured. "They never stop." And as he spoke, I could feel something terrible moving in the dark. Something I couldn't see, but could sense closing in. I tried to speak, to ask him what he meant. But before I could get the words out, the air shifted again. And just like that, I was somewhere else. The ground beneath me was soft, like sand, but not warm. No, it was freezing cold. I looked around, but all I could see were shadows that seemed to move on their own. The sky above me was wrong. It wasn't blue. It wasn't even dark. It was like a sickly greenish gray, like the world had been drained of all color. As I walked forward, the silence was crushing. No birds, no wind, nothing but the sound of my own breath, shallow and ragged. And then, in the distance, I saw a flicker. It wasn't a light, but a movement. Slowly, it grew closer. I couldn't look away. The air around me grew heavier, denser, as if the very atmosphere was alive, pulling me in, urging me to see something I wasn't ready for. Out of the fog, the figures began to appear. At first, I thought they were just shadows, but as they came closer, I realized they were people. Not normal people. These were figures I had never seen before. They were contorted like they were in pain, their bodies twisted in ways that should have been impossible. Some of them were scorched, their skin burned and raw, yet still alive. Others were covered in chains, dragging them across the ground with each step. And their eyes were empty, hollow, as if they had been staring into eternity and had lost everything, even their souls. And that's when I felt it. A pull. A deep, sinking pull toward a figure standing at the edge of this horrid landscape. It was a woman, draped in black. Her face was hidden behind a veil, but I could feel her eyes on me. Cold, judgmental. Her presence sent shivers down my spine. She didn't speak, but I felt her words. She was warning me, "Don't stay too long. You're not meant to be here." I turned away from her, but my gaze fell on the man in the center of the tormented crowd. It was Hitler, but he was no longer the man I had seen before, pleading in terror. Now, he was different. He was writhing on the ground, surrounded by a ring of figures that seemed to laugh, if you could call it laughing. It was more like a low, guttural noise that seemed to come from deep within the earth itself. The figures were cloaked in darkness, their faces obscured, but their laughter, It felt like a mockery of life. Hitler's body was covered in wounds. His skin was cracked, bleeding, and his eyes were wide, horrified. But he wasn't crying. No. There was no pleading now. His mouth was agape in an eternal scream that could never escape. It was like time itself had stopped, trapping him in this eternal torment. "Please," I whispered, feeling sick. "Why are you here? What happened to you?" He didn't answer. Instead, one of the figures surrounding him turned to me. It was a woman, but not a woman anymore. Her body was twisted, like she was made of shadows, her limbs elongated and distorted. Her eyes, they didn't look human. There was no soul behind them. She spoke to me in a voice that sounded like 1,000 whispers layered over each other. "You do not belong here," she said. "But you've seen enough. You've seen his punishment." The woman raised her hand, and suddenly the entire scene seemed to warp. The shadows swallowed everything around me, and I felt my body being yanked back, dragged through the darkness. My heart raced, my breath caught in my throat. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I didn't want to stay. Not there. Not with those eyes. That torment. And then, as quickly as it all started, I was back. I woke up in the hospital bed, my heart pounding. I was alive. I was alive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a line. A line I wasn't meant to cross. I couldn't explain what happened to me, what I had seen. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't forget it either. I tried to tell people. I tried to make sense of it, but no one could understand. They all looked at me like I was crazy. I wanted to forget, but the images of that place, the figures in torment, and especially Hitler's eyes, I couldn't get rid of them. Every night, I closed my eyes and wonder, was it real? Or was it just my mind playing tricks on me, trying to process something I wasn't ready to face? The worst part, I don't know if I was the only one who saw it. There's a part of me deep down that believes that Hitler wasn't the only one there. There's a part of me that believes there are others, people from history, people we've never thought about, all facing their own eternity in that twisted world. And maybe, just maybe, if I ever go back, if I ever slip through again, I might see someone else. Someone famous, or someone completely unknown. But one thing I do know is that some things, some people, never escape the consequences of their actions. They're trapped in that place, just like the rest of us. And the more I think about it, the more I wonder, what happens to our souls when we cross the line? Will we too be forever caught in that hell?